So Islam Makhachev dropped some fire on us today, and he laid out his schedule essentially for the next 12 or 13 months. He says he wants to fight Justin Gaethje on June 8th, and then he wants to turn around and fight at Madison Square Garden in November against the winner of Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan. And then he said in February 25th, it's anybody. It's open season. And to me, that means that he's going to try to move up to 170, and he doesn't know who the champ's going to be there yet and what's going to shake out at that division. But you got to feel like if he is able to defeat Justin Gaethje in the summer and then actually fight the winner of Charles and Arman in November, that he would likely not have much left at 155, and a champ sort of status would be what he's eyeing. So what do you make of the announcements? And then more importantly, if he's able to follow this schedule and win all three of these fights, regardless of who the three opponents end up being, can we crown him the lightweight GOAT?
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. If he is able to run that schedule and get his hand raised in all three of those fights, absolutely. He's got to rank at least 1A and 1B with Khabib as far as the lightweight GOATs. And I know that that's a very controversial topic because that belt has seemed to just pass hands for years and years. But Islam Makhachev is kind of doing everything that you'd want out of a champion. He wants to be active. When he goes out there, he's winning emphatically. And not only is he beating the best people in his division, but he's beating the pound-for-pound best as well. And he's making it look easy every time he goes out there. Now he's basically just going for finishes and seeing how fast he can get the best fighters on the planet out of there. So I like the fact that he's looking to go with fresh blood. I like that he wants to get Justin Gaethje in there. I like that he wants to see if Charles is able to get another rematch, if he's worthy of that. And also, he's willing to take on the next generation, the new up-and-comer, the guy that he's beaten once before but is a totally different fighter and would be a totally different fight this many years down the road in Arman Tsarukyan. So I think this is the exact right move Islam should do. Look, there's not that many champions in the UFC that want to be as active as Islam wants to be. And sometimes, due to roster, due to the UFC, due to politics, due to all sorts of things, we have our best fighters, our best champions in the best years of their lives, and they're on the sidelines.
Right.
And it really does suck. It does take a lot of the steam out of the fans as well as the fighters. You have to feel for those guys that want to get in there, and then they just can't seem to make it happen. Islam seems like the kind of guy that's done enough heavy lifting for the UFC. He's as dominant of champion as you could possibly ask for. He should be able to call these types of shots. And in my opinion, it's a different strategy than what a lot of champions do, but it's a very interesting one. And I think the fans would love to get on board with it's almost like a schedule he's laying out for himself.
Yeah, and he wanted to fight before Ramadan, and he was unable to get that fight, and then we found out about the injury. But the reality of the matter is, I think it's smart picking as far as Islam is concerned, because everybody wants to see Justin Gaethje versus Islam. That's a great fight.
Yes.
Justin Gaethje has looked stellar lately, and the reality of the matter is Charles and Arman is going to be a heck of a fight.
Right.
And likely whoever comes out with their hand raised in that fight is still going to need 4 or 5 months before they're ready to do a training camp and get back in there and fight again.
Right.
So for Islam to just sit out all summer long, see what happens with Charles and Arman, and then let the winner of that kind of recompose themselves, start training again, and get back ready to fight in the fall, it doesn't make sense. Islam's last 2 fights have been against a featherweight in Volkanovski, and albeit he was the #1 pound-for-pound fighter on the roster prior to those 2 fights with Islam, he's still a featherweight, and we really want to see Islam fighting the best that lightweight has to offer. And Justin Gaethje, Arman Tsarukyan, and Charles Oliveira are exactly that. So Charles, to me, I wasn't super bullish on letting him jump right back in there for a rematch right after, beating Beneil Dariush because of the way he lost to Islam the first time. I kind of preferred Gaethje anyways, but certainly make no bones about it. Oliveira beats Arman Tsarukyan. He's absolutely deserving, and the same can be said for Arman. And then I think I can speak for all of us when I say that we've got no problem with Islam trying to become a champ. I think the champ thing has been kind of overplayed and overused in the last few years, where you grab the title and then you say, I want to be a champ, and you haven't even really defended the title that you have just yet. But for Islam, if he's able to complete this schedule and beat Gaethje in the summer, beat the winner of Tsarukyan and Oliveira in the fall/winter, I think that we all can agree that he gets his right to go up and fight whoever the 170 champion is and try to become the true #1 guy in both divisions, which would be a feat that let's be honest, not even Khabib attained. Khabib talked a lot about going up in his career. What happened with Abdulmanap, his father, and his early passing kind of set in motion Khabib's untimely early retirement from the sport. And as of right now, I have Khabib as my number one lightweight of all time. And what could Khabib have done had he continued fighting? I think we all can say he probably would have continued winning. However, what would have happened and what did happen are two different things. And so if Islam is able to win both of these fights, go up to 170 and grab that 170 crown, he will have fulfilled, in my opinion, a certain level of achievement that not even Khabib attained. And that speaks to just how good he actually is, and how good Khabib now is kind of the leader of that Dagestani team. I think it's awesome. I'd love to see this schedule come to fruition. And I think Islam's got a fighting chance in every single one of those fights, and he'd probably be the favorite in all three.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if there's anybody on the planet that would be happy with losing their number one spot in a lot of people's eyes as the best fighter their division's ever seen, it's Khabib losing it to Islam. And you said something about the champ status that I think is very important, right? So everybody nowadays, ever since Conor McGregor got the 45 belt and immediately went up to 55, everybody wants to go with that model. And I think that the champ status, I'm all for it. I think that it's really a unique thing. The general public, the casuals, if you will, can understand, all right, we're going to get a guy who's a world champion and he's going to go up 10 pounds and fight another world champion. It does make the fight a little bit easier to sell. But I think people are looking at it more strictly from a financial standpoint. They're like, okay, if I get the belt right now, I don't want to have to go and defend it in my division right now. I can go up and fight somebody, and I'm kind of playing with house money at this point.
Yeah.
I'm not really risking my own belt. I've got a new contract. Generally, that's how it goes with the UFC.
Stay in the pay-per-view money.
Right,
Yeah.
Stay in the pay-per-view money. I stay on the top of a pay-per-view card, increase my name by a whole nother UFC event. And then if I don't, get my hand raised against the guy in the weight class above me, then I can just go back down. I've still got a great payday from the fight up that I explored, and then I get to come back down, get another payday as the champion here. And I think it's more of a financial motion for these fighters, and they're using it as a buffer. And that's why I kind of like Islam's situation. I think if you're going to be a champ, if you want to go for champ status, you need to be dominant with your current belt and then go up. And that's why I think Islam really does have his sights set on knocking everybody out of 155 and then kind of showing us that there's really nobody out there on the landscape that can hang with him at 55, and he's going to go test the waters at 70. I do agree with you that Khabib Nurmagomedov probably would have gone to 170 if his career didn't get cut short due to things outside of the cage that he really had no control over. But I think he'd like to see Islam go in there, and maybe he can kind of live vicariously through Islam's career and see if they were able to, conquer two divisions. I think that if Islam can go up and beat whoever's got the belt at 170 by the time, next year rolls around, maybe, February or in the middle of the summer International Fight Week or something, we can just go ahead and say that if Khabib did the same sort of thing, if he didn't have a early into his career, he likely would have been able to do the same exact thing as Islam. I really like what these guys are doing. I think the guys that he's lined up to fight next, Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, or Arman Tsarukyan, are the right guys. I think every one of those guys could give him the fight that he needs to really propel himself into that number one spot as lightweight's best fighter. But we do have to see all these fights happen, and we need to see Islam Makhachev active because that's what he wants. And we've only got these fighters in these small windows of their prime for a few years. And Islam Makhachev, though he's the best on the planet right now, he's not always going to be in his prime, and that's why we need to take advantage of these years.
Yeah, and one final thing, speaking of that third fight, because I think we can all agree that it will be at 170 if he wins the first two.
Yeah.
I really only see there being three potential people that could be champion at 170 by February 2025, and that is Leon Edwards, Belal Muhammad, Shavkat Rakhmonov. So I think the opponent can be narrowed down to those three, and honestly, sign me up for any of those three fights. Any way you slice it, Islam Makhachev versus Leon or Belal or Shavkat would be a huge fight. That's granted that he's able to get past both contenders at 155, but I mean, the future is very bright for Islam's career. I think he's going to be in his prime for at least another 2 or 3 years, and I'm all for this schedule. Let's have some fun.